Close your eyes and let the evening gather around you. Imagine a quiet room touched by a thin skein of starlight, a barely audible hum from the night outside, the breath-soft rhythm of your own chest rising and falling. In your mind's hands, hold a weight just heavier than you expect. Warm, delicate, furrowed. The human brain. 86 billion neurons folded into a landscape of gentle ridges and valleys. A small cosmos of electricity and memory, suspended in a cradle of bone, floating on a clear sea. It hums with patterns that began long before you were born, long before your parents, long before the first cities and seeds and songs. In the soft light, ask it, how did we become this way? Where did this mind's long story begin? Let us walk backward, slowly, softly. Step to the edge of a shoreline where the wind smells faintly of salt and sun-warmed rock. Let your attention settle on the tiny waves combing the sand. Each wave is a moment, a neuron spark, a memory's whisper. Now follow the foam back to the sea, and the sea back to a darker, older ocean. Ours is a brain with tides. It carries the memory of water, the hush of ancient currents, the low, persistent rhythm of life that began in shallows where sunlight could still find its way. Before hands fashioned tools, fins flickered. Before a prefrontal plan, there was the steady planning of gills drawing breath through water, and the earliest threads of a nervous system learning to sense, to move, to predict. In the beginning, long before we were human, before mammals even dreamed through the night, there was the simplest map, a body, a world, and a seam between them. Cells learned to notice the outside. Chemical gradients tugged. Light and shadow pulsed. The first neurons were like careful listeners, tiny keepers of difference, passing whispers of change from one to another in shimmering chains. From this delicate relay came something new, a way to gather time, to stitch together what just happened with what might happen next. A nervous system is a storyteller. Even the simplest one sketches. If, then, in soft strokes of ion and current, life began to anticipate. Walk a little further back. Hear the glimmering splash of early fish, their spines stiffening, their eyes learning to polish light into image. A brainstem to control essential rhythms, a cerebellum to fine-tune motion, an olfactory bulb to favor safety and food evolution, was not designing but leaning, nudging, keeping what worked. Each feature beige as driftwood, designed by nobody, honed by time. The world was a tutor, and the lessons were simple. Move toward what sustains. Move away from what harms. With this came the first faintness of feeling, in a sense not yet human. A mapping of the body's internal waves, an embodied intelligence that would grow until it could speak. Climb up onto damp sand. Watch as fins experiment with the idea of limbs. Amphibians, then early reptiles, taste the air. The land's harshness, its irregular heartbeat of drought and flood, cold and heat, writes sturdier code into animals. The brain learns to weather uncertainty. By the time mammals emerge, small and warm and mostly nocturnal, something original is flowering. A thin sheet of tissue wrapping the brain's surface, layered and nimble, the ancestor of our neocortex. In tiny night creatures, this tissue hums, giving them a private theater where senses combine, where a squeak means danger and a scent predicts a path. Sleep appears in richer shades. Dreams practice possibilities. When the dinosaurs fall away into ash and emptiness, mammals step blinking into daylight. Their brains begin to elaborate like vines exposed to sun. Smell, hearing, sight expand. Patches of cortex start conversing in longer phrases, not just single notes. And then, slowly, primates unfurl in trees, their hands learning distances with astonishing precision, their eyes reading shadows and edges, their brains beginning to model the minds of others. The forest becomes a seminar in complexity. Fruit ripens in patterns. Leaves hide predators and secrets. The ability to reach, to plan, to see the arc of a branch in the arc of a body. These skills are rehearsals for cognition yet to come. Now listen. There is a soft, low thunder far away, the thunder of time coiling on itself. We are getting closer. The primate brain grows more folded, more cross-wired. Social life gathers density. A face becomes a library. A glance carries a paragraph. Mothers nurse. Infants cling and learn. Whisper by whisper, culture begins. A passing of traditions not in genes, but in gestures. Wash food this way. Crack nuts on that stone. Social bonds require memory, nuance, restraint. Brains become choreographers of trust. And then, somewhere between canopy and savanna, a decisive tilt. Bodies summer forward, balancing on two legs. Hands freed learn new languages of touch. Bipedalism opens horizons. The world seems to widen like a lung drawing a deep breath. Traveling becomes less costly. The hands discover new roles, carrying, forging, pointing, shaping. The primate brain, meeting this shift, begins to reimagine itself. In the hush between breath and breath, bring your mind back to that quiet room where we began. The brain in your hands is no longer a mystery sealed in bone. It is a living archive, its pages worn thin in places where earlier species turned them too. We are each a story in a series, some sentences bold and new, others underlined again and again across millions of years. But our question stands. How exactly did evolution craft such extravagant attention, such layered memory, such patient imagination? What bargains were struck? What energies reallocated? What genes rewrote their own footnotes to allow the mind to bloom? Set the brain gently down. Notice the soft color of evening giving way to night. Somewhere in the distance, a small flame touches tinder. It is the first hint of a tool we did not inherit but learned, and with it, a new axis of time. Firelight dances on stone. Hands reach toward it, and voices soften. The brain leans closer to what it will become. We will go there next, to firelight and hunger, to the long apprenticeship between heat and thought, and to the quiet arithmetic that made room inside us for wonder. Imagine the earth inhaling. Grass rattles, heat loosens. The sky opens its pale blue bowl. Our ancestors stand a little taller now, the spine like a mast, the head lifted into new wind. The ground beneath their feet is seasonally generous and seasonally stern. Savannas fold into woodland, woodland into open flats. Waterholes mirror clouds. Predators flicker at horizon lines like moving punctuation marks. The story of our brain will now hinge on many small necessities: fuel, safety, cooperation, and on a series of trade-offs that quietly nudged our nervous system towards something astonishing. A brain is costly. Even at rest, it drinks energy with a steady thirst. In humans, this shimmering organ, about 2% of body mass, burns about a fifth of our daily budget. It is an investment and a gamble. Evolution is thrifty. It does not spend without return. Where did the extra energy come from to enlarge the primate brain and then exceed itself in us? several keys jingle softly together. 1. What we ate and how we made it easier to digest. Early hominins likely scavenged and hunted with growing skill, cracking bones from marrow, rich in calories, learning to balance plant foods with meat and fat, tasting the landscape's hidden caches. Over time, there is evidence that we learned not just to find food, but to change it. Fire, the quiet alchemy. Even intermittent control of it would soften roots, kill pathogens, gelatinize starch, denature proteins, turning tough into tender, inaccessible into available. Cooking, perhaps arriving in steps embers first, then hearth, that our ancestors eat more in less time and draw more from what they ate. This is not a single cause, but a profound helper. With warmth came a freer brain budget. 2. Partnership with one another. The body asks for care long after birth, and in our kind, the infant arrives early, born unfinished. Narrow pelvises for upright walking and a big brain are a tricky fit. An evolution solution was to deliver brains that would do much of their growing outside the womb, bathed in culture and care. Cooperative breeding, sharing infant care with fathers, grandmothers, siblings, friends, spreads the metabolic load. Others carry, feed, teach. This frees mothers, reduces risk, and creates a social fabric strong enough to hold the slow ripening of neural circuits. A network of care is a nutrient, as real as minerals in water. 3. A body made for distance. There is a patient story humming through our tendons and sweat glands, our springy arches and stabilized heads. We became, in many places, good at moving far, even in heat, releasing warmth through skin as we went. Endurance hunts and long foraging trips weave a rhythm into the day, and with this rhythm, a need to forecast and remember. Where did the berries ripen last season? Where will they ripen next? Which water source fades last? The brain's map-making becomes an art. Place cells in the hippocampus learning to sing the tune of a space, grid cells adding the lattice beneath that song. Navigation feeds cognition. A mind that knows its world can risk complexity. Meanwhile, high above and deep within, genes whisper adjustments. Mutations most neutral, some harmful. A few helpful drop like small stones into a river, and the current bends around them. Several genetic changes are linked to our growing cortex. A duplicated gene here allows more neural progenitors to divide a few extra times. Another tweak prolongs the window of brain growth in infancy. Still others alter the shape of the developing skull, the timing of synapse formation, the pace of myelination. None of these mutations thought themselves grand. Together, over long distances of time, they loosened certain constraints and tightened others, giving evolution room to sculpt. As the brain grows, it organizes like a city. Early vertebrate structures remain the old town center. Brainstem for vital rhythms, the cerebellum refining motion. On top, a sheet of 6-layered neocortex spreads and folds, adding surface area within the skull's fixed volume. Sensory neighborhoods build in familiar places. Motor neighborhoods just in front. Connections form over short blocks. First, nearby neurons talk like neighbors leaning over balconies. Later, longer bridges are built. Thick bundles of axons, insulated with myelin, connecting distant districts. These highways support coordination. The occipital cortex's images sync with meaning, sound with symbol, touch with anticipation. Primates, especially, nourish the prefrontal regions, a set of areas that hold tasks in mind, discipline impulses, simulate futures. This is not a king commanding from above, but a council of subnetworks negotiating with the older instincts below. The social world becomes a teacher more demanding than whether what someone else believes matters. What they intend, what they remember, what they feel. These must be guessed, updated, tested. Slowly, the brain grows more patient. It learns to wait, to watch, to model. But growth has a cost. A larger brain at birth is limited by a pelvis shaped for walking. The answer, again, is time, a long childhood and adolescence. During this stretch, the brain overproduces synapses like a forest in spring, dense, green, extravagant. Then, with experience as a gardener, it prunes. The branches that bear fruit remain. Those that do not are trimmed. This sculpting, guided by use, gives each brain its fingerprint. If you grew up near the sea, certain maps will be more vivid. If you grew up with music at dusk, the brain may carry that rhythm into everything. There is a gentle tension here, but not a harsh one. We are balancing two truths: that brains are built by genes, and that they are rewritten by experience. Our lineage tilted the balance toward plasticity, toward a prolonged openness to the world. We paid for this with time and energy, and we were repaid with flexibility, the ability to inhabit many places, to adapt to changes without starting from scratch. As night deepens, imagine an early camp. Sparks drift up, and the darkness beyond them feels less like a wall and more like a spacious room. Around the glowing center, faces reflect orange and gold. This is not just warmth or protection. It is rehearsal space. Stories begin. A quiet rhythm of call and response develops. Eyes watch lips, minds trace meaning. The air gently vibrates with the most human of tools, shared attention. With it, something new will crystallize in the coming acts of our story, language. The bridges in the brain that will support it are already growing. Between the pop of a coal and the sigh of the night wind, press your ear to the present and to the past at once. We stand on a threshold. In the next breath, our tools will change our diet. Our diet will change our bodies. Our bodies will favor longer childhoods. Our long childhoods will raise the curtain for culture, and culture, in turn, will ask the brain to grow another room. Let's step into that light together and watch the hands that shape stone begin to shape thought. Picture the edge of a riverbed, the water cool and slow, the stones in it slick to the touch. A hand, careful now, turns a cobble just so, seeking a fracture line. Another stone strikes it at a precise angle. A flake pops free, thin and sharp. This is one of the earliest tools, and more than a tool, it is a lesson the brain offers itself. A demonstration in cause and effect, in sequences, in planning. Oldowan technology, the simplest core and flake industry, becomes a language of rhythm and intention. Each flake implies a gesture that can be repeated, taught, improved. With this repetition, the brain hears itself thinking. With time, the stone grammar grows more elaborate. Aculean hand axes, symmetrical and handsome, appear teardrops of utility and patience. To shape an Aculean masterwork requires foresight, a mental image held while a series of blows carve reality toward blueprint. It is sculpture rooted in hunger. And in the hands that made them, the brain is learning to sustain a plan across minutes, to evaluate a result against an ideal, to tolerate imperfection, to begin again. This is practice for everything that will follow: art, science, laws. Meanwhile, in the quiet theater of the womb and the long years after, the brain's development changes its choreography. We are born with skulls that can mold through the birth canal. The brain arrives still in draft. Its growth spurts happen in bursts: motor control, then language, then adolescence's reweavings, each phase guided by both genetic cues and the environment's drum. A gene duplication here, like NOTC, H2NL, may slow neuronal differentiation, expanding the pool of progenitor cells and granting a later bloom. Another a segment of RGAP11 may shift how radial glia divide, producing more of the neural precursors that build cortex. SIRGAP2's human-specific copy might have altered the shape and maturity of dendritic spines, making synapses more plastic, prolonging the window when circuits can be refined by experience. These details are careful, still being clarified, but they share a theme. The brain lengthened its childhood to weave a richer tapestry. Consider FOXP2, not a language gene, but a key in a larger lock. Changes in this gene affect speech and language circuits. Damage to it disrupts our ability to move the mouth and tongue in precise patterns that speech requires. The human version seems to have stabilized early in our lineage. Even Neanderthals carried a similar variant. The lesson is modest and deep. Language is not a single gene's gift. It is a symphony of motor control, auditory memory, social timing, and a brain that loves structure. Around the fire, dusk after dusk, children watch hands move in the amber light. They track eye gaze. They learn whose stories leave people leaning in. They collect rules: when to speak, when to wait, how to share in small pieces what is too large to swallow at once. Teaching becomes more explicit. This transmission of skill and symbol is culture, and it becomes a second inheritance. Genes begin to follow where culture leads a coevolution. For example, as cooking and starch-rich diets become more standard, some human groups carry extra copies of the salivary amylase gene, helping to break down starch more effectively. Cultural practices also favor certain social structures, and those structures in turn select for temperaments that thrive in them. Less reactive aggression, more trust, better mutual aid. Fuel and fire, care and craft. Still, this is not a straight line and not a race. Other hominins journeyed with us. Neanderthals, with brains on average as large as ours and bodies adapted to cold climates, mastered their own toolkits, hunted in coordinated groups, tended to their injured, made pigments, perhaps adorned themselves. Denisovans, known mostly through the whisper of their DNA, left traces in our genomes, proof that our lineages braided and unbraided across time. If we are special, it is not in being alone. It is in being part of a chorus that included other verses. What then makes our brain's shape distinct? A subtle roundness globularity develops in modern humans as the parietal regions and cerebellum adjust their proportions. Inside this rounder house, connections among language regions stretch longer and denser. The arcuate fasciculus, that elegant bundle linking temporal and frontal language areas, spans more territory in us than in other apes. The default mode network regions that hum together when the mind is restful, weaving self and story, may be tuned differently, supporting a richer inner narrative. The cerebellum, once thought only a maestro of movement, syncs with thinking and language in intimate counterpoint, timing not only steps but thoughts. And astrocytes, the star-shaped glial cells that nurse and organize neural traffic, are larger and more complex in humans, orchestrating energy flow and synaptic rhythms for long-range symphonies. Our social life thickens further. The social brain is not a single spot but a guild. Temporal regions for reading faces and voices, prefrontal webs for modeling minds, limbic circuits for emotion, insular islands mapping the interior. Sensorimotor systems respond to others' movements with quiet resonance, allowing us to learn by watching. Empathy grows from many roots, mirror-like processes that echo others' actions, bodily maps that allow another's pain to be glimpsed within, and the slow education of culture teaching us how to care. Language emerges not as a sudden invention, but as a steepening gradient. Vocal tracts reshaped by a descended larynx and flexible tongue produce a wealth of syllables. Breath control fine-tuned by the brainstem and cortex sustains long phrases. Temporal lobes specialize in mapping sound to meaning. Frontal regions practice the delicate braiding of words into grammar. Around fire and under stars, we tell each other what is not present. Where the herd moved yesterday, what the elders learned 2 seasons ago, what might happen if clouds keep piling at dawn. The brain practices time travel. Memory and imagination meet in a handshake. Art joins. Pigments ground and blown over hands on cave walls create negative silhouettes, hello written in absence. Flutes carved from bone sing notes that tremble the ribs. The earliest jewelry glints. These are not luxuries added last. They are scaffolds for community and cognition. Rhythm braids bodies together. It coordinates movement for work and for defense. Images shared create common reference points. A painted animal is a rehearsal for the animal itself. A myth is a portable lesson. Our brains are conduits for meaning, but meaning needs shared forms. Art builds them. At night, sleep consolidates the day's traffic. In REM, the cortex runs and reruns sequences, stitches motor skills into the body's repertoire, recodes memories from fresh, fragile traces to something more durable. The brain's cleaning systems pulse. Fluid moves. Byproducts wash away. Wakefulness builds and sleep prunes. Practice thickens and sleep fine-tunes. In this silent maintenance, we see an echo of our evolutionary history. Growth and pruning, addition and refinement. Fires breathe lower. The Milky Way drifts like a slow river overhead. The story has moved from stone to symbol. We now stand on the cusp of rituals and norms, of villages and kin networks, measured not by blood alone, but by shared meaning. The question becomes possible. What kind of mind do we want to grow? Evolution continues to shape capacity, but culture will shape content. The next chapter stretches this interplay wider as climate dances and migrations unfurl, and our species learns to carry not only tools, but worlds within. Close your eyes to the embers. Listen for the faintest footfall of the future in the dust. It sounds like a map being redrawn. Morning returns as a pale wash, like ink diluted in a bowl. We rise into an age of migrations. Ice advances, retreats. Grasslands soften, then sharpen again. Rivers rescribe their courses. With each shift, our ancestors adjust their stories and their steps. In such a climate of change, a flexible brain is gold. The climate variability hypothesis proposes that the swaying of environments rewarded minds that could revise their own rules. Our lineage leaned into that revision. The brain, as if anticipating this, had already become a dance between stable structure and soft adaptation. Let's step inside its architecture, in a way that honors quiet. If the cortex is a city seen from above, slow your gaze so the highways are apparent. White matter tracks bundles like the corpus callosum, and the superior longitudinal fasciculus carry messages swiftly between distant districts. Each bundle is a chorus of axons wrapped in myelin, allowing pulses to arrive not only fast but on time, the timing itself carrying meaning. Specificity is the brain's currency. When one region sings a fraction of a second before another, a different melody is made. Toward the back, the occipital cortex renders light into shape. In the middle, the temporal lobes host long-term memories and the lexicon of sounds to words, faces to names. Along the top, parietal areas knit sight and touch into maps of parapersonal space, of tools becoming temporary extensions of the body. In the front, prefrontal regions hold goals, weigh benefits against costs, quiet impulses when patience pays, imagine alternatives. The insula listens to the interior heartbeat, breath, hunger, and relays that hum toward decisions. The anterior cingulate tracks conflict, warning gently when actions and intentions diverge. The amygdala tags moments with salience, not only fear, but importance. The hippocampus strings experience into episodes, time-ordered and place-anchored. Beneath it all, the brainstem steadies the tide. And then there is the default mode network midline areas lighting when we turn inward. It links past to future, self to others, reality to possible worlds. In its generous silence, we reflect and dream. Evolution did not plan a default mode. It found that a brain that wanders can also prepare. Scenarios played lightly at rest and save time later. A story rehearsed is a life reheard. Meditation and memory meet here. Creativity draws water from this well. If there is a signature move in our brain's recent history, it is the multiplication of connections among these regions and the increasing role of long-range synchronization. The slow expansion of the cerebellum's reach into cognitive domains supports sequencing and precise timing, not only for limbs, but for sentences. The subtle alterations in human astrocytes allow complex modulation of networks. The overall picture is of a brain that can coordinate multiple streams at once: perception with prediction, feeling with intention, inner sensation with outer behavior. Why this symphony? One answer is social. To keep track of social worlds with dozens, then hundreds of individuals, each with a history, a bond, a reputation, requires working memory stretched and refreshed, inhibitory control to keep from rashness, empathy to maintain trust, and language to transmit what matters. The social brain hypothesis suggests that increasing group complexity nudged cognitive complexity forward. Another answer is ecological. Our ancestors foraged in landscapes whose rhythms demanded planning and long-term memory. A third answer is cultural. Once a certain threshold of teaching and learning is crossed, culture itself ratchets forward, creating niches of meaning that select for brains that can enter them. We can also think in terms of energy economies. The expensive tissue hypothesis notes that our gut shortened over time relative to other primates, perhaps made possible by higher quality diets. Calories saved in digestion could be spent in cognition, but energy is not just calories. It is time, safety, trust. The community is the brain's second stomach. When childcare is shared, when hunting yields are predictable, when fire lengthens daylight into an artificial dusk, the mind can wander farther. Notice how gentle the causality is. Not a single trigger or hero, but a braid of causes. The ground shifts. We adapt. Our adaptations shift the ground. Gene-culture coevolution is this woven river. Literacy, a recent invention, offers a late example. Learning to read repurposes circuits evolved for visual object recognition and language, yielding a new network, the reading circuit, without any genetic change needed. In a similar way, earlier cultural practices likely nudged the brain to carve new side channels out of the rivers it already had. Now pan the camera sideways to our sister lineages. Neanderthals and modern humans overlapped, exchanged genes, and likely ideas. The archaeological record shows both crafting tools with skill, both navigating complex ecologies. Differences may lie not in raw brain size, but in pattern. Modern humans show a parietal bulge and subtle differences in cerebellar regions. The arcuate fasciculus takes a longer course. The shape of the skull changes how regions relate. These differences may have tuned us toward more frequent innovation or denser symbolic culture. But humility matters. We are learning how many ways intelligence can be arranged. Under all this lies a quiet thrumming. Attachment. Human infants gaze, coo, babble. Their brains are expecting a duet. Serve and return interactions look, response. Sound, echo wire language circuits. Calibrate stress systems. Embed trust into physiology. Touch regulates heartbeat. Voice tone shapes arousal. Developmental science reveals that the architecture of cognition is braided tightly with emotion. A regulated body fosters a ready mind. In this, evolution paired the growth of thought with the growth of care. In adolescence, pruning and myelination reshuffle. Reward circuits become more sensitive. Risk looks different. Cultures respond by offering rights and guidance, space to practice adult roles. The prefrontal cortex continues maturing into the 20s. What feels like turbulence is often remapping. The brain is deciding what to keep. It keeps what we use and what soothes. This offers a soft counsel. Surround growing minds with rhythms that heal and challenge. When we sleep, the lymphatic flow clears, dreams rehearse, immune systems tune, and the next day is rendered more possible. In waking, the body's metabolism supports synapses with freshest fuel. The astrocyte neuron dance ensures that firing cells do not go hungry. Oxygen carriage, mitochondrial dynamics, the brain's sparing strategy of coding difference, rather than absolute all, contribute to a careful economy. We are a species built on keeping costs down and signal quality high. We have time for a final analogy before we near our last chapter. Think of the brain as a shoreline between three seas: the sea of biology and ancestry, the sea of social life and culture, and the sea of personal experience. Waves from each sea wash against this shore. The coastline reshapes slowly under the push and pull, forming coves and promontories, harbors and cliffs. Your brain's shape is partly ancient bedrock and partly the latest tide. To ask how evolution created the human brain is to ask how these seas taught the shore to sing. Dusk returns, as it always does in our story, with a sweet relief. Fires kindle. Someone hums a melody older than words. We have traced the building of a mind through structure, energy, and care. Only one thing remains: to ask what this story means for us in quiet rooms, with starlight at the edges, and how we might carry forward this inheritance with gratitude and grace. The room is dim again. Listen to your breath, as if it were the sea pulling gently across sand. Feel the weight of your body supported, the tug of gravity a familiar hand. In you, the human brain hums with its 70-some years of likely life, its cycles of learning and forgetting, its particular loves. It is made of ancient parts that remember being fish, of mammal lullabies that rock sleep and nursing, of primate games of glance and gesture, of hominin fires that knitted night to story. It is, in a quiet way, the most autobiographical organ, forever writing itself, forever erasing and writing again. When you picture evolution, do not picture a ladder climbed or a finish line crossed. Picture instead a garden tended by weather seeds blown by chance, blossoms repeating in new colors when conditions are kind. Our brain is one such blossom. Its petals are cognition and compassion, technical skill and musical timing, humor and patience. Each petal was fed by sun and soil we did not choose, the generosity of others, the shelter of communities, the luck of being born into a wrist of time where knowledge could be shared across vast distances. That sharing is our genius. It is a genius of togetherness. What does this mean in the day-to-day hush of a human life? It means your attention is precious and plastic. Every time you practice kindness, circuits that make kindness easier are being tuned. Every time you learn something new, not traumatic, just steady, the brain is laying another walkway you can use later. Reading rewires you. Music tightens timing. Walking in nature refreshes maps and moods. Sleep protects what you plant. You are the caretaker of an organ that responds to care. It also means we can hold ourselves gently. Much of what we call character is a dialogue between our history and our context. If your brain is sometimes tired, it may be because a costly organ is doing what it evolved to do. Simulate futures, scan for meaning, keep bonds intact. Gratitude is rest for the mind. So is curiosity. When we reframe challenges as puzzles, the prefrontal cortex leans in rather than braces. The body softens. The world becomes workable again. Evolution left us with open windows long childhoods, late maturing executive functions, lifelong plasticity. Through these windows, culture blows in. We can choose what drafts we welcome. Consider building daily rituals that honor the pace our brain prefers. Moments of silence between tasks to let networks reset. Time outside to let the hippocampus bathe in real space. Shared meals to coach social circuits toward warmth. Stories before sleep that fold the day into meaning. None of this is fancy. It is human. There is comfort in remembering how much of you is shared. Neurons speak the same ionic language in whales and mice, owls and people. The deep structure of fear and joy is a core progression played by many species. What we have added is a humbling, sometimes aching, capacity for symbolic thought. We can feel sadness for a stranger, admiration for a craftsman long dead. We can care about future people we will never meet. This is costly. It is also the place where our brain's long path becomes an offering, an ability to imagine wider circles of concern. In the great debate about what made us human, there will always be new findings. The dates will shift, the gene names will change, tools will be reclassified, artworks redated. Let the details adjust in your mind without anxiety. The heart of the story is simple and sturdy. Over countless generations, life's quiet experiment with nerve and self learned to expand. It found ways to buy time and energy, to share burdens and knowledge, to spread memory beyond the single head into families and villages and libraries. The human brain is a portion of nervous tissue that hosts a culture. You carry today a tiny part of that library. And then there is sleep. If the day is a lesson, the night is a librarian. While you rest, glial cells open channels, fluid moves, used chemicals are recycled. The day's noise is sorted into signals. Dreams spin what if into what now means. This nightly maintenance is not separate from evolution's story. It is a continuation. Every night, your brain rehearses the same balance it struck across millennia. Growth with pruning, excitement with restoration. To fall asleep is to trust that this long ritual will hold. Hold that trust a moment longer. Think of your ancestors' individuals, not abstractions. A mother calming a child with a hummed line. A father teaching a throw by guiding a wrist. A grandmother showing which leaves are safe. A friend sharing a secret name of a spring. They did not know they were building prefrontal circuits or reinforcing hippocampal maps. They knew only the satisfaction of competence, the warmth of being useful, the relief of being seen. Their brains were laid brick by brick in these small exchanges. So is yours. So will be the brains of those who come after us. What do we owe that future? Perhaps this, to keep our culture supple and kind, so that the plastic brain has gentle molds in which to find itself. To honor difference in minds as variation, not deviation. To recognize that our cleverness without our compassion will not feel like home. Evolution gave us a mind that can choose what to become. We can choose, each day, a little more empathy, a little more patience, a little more awe. Step back now to the place we began. A quiet room, your breath steady, the hush outside like felt. The brain you carry is old and new at once. Its atoms were forged in stars. Its patterns were rehearsed in fish. Its songs were tuned by societies. Its pages are being written by you. When you fall asleep tonight, think of how far you've come without moving. From ocean to savanna, to city, to this moment. Feel gratitude that your species learned to tell its own story back to itself, calmly, with wonder. That story is not finished. It continues every time you ask a gentle question. If you'd like to drift with us again into these long, quiet journeys into the Hypnosphere, consider subscribing. We'll be here, in a soft glow between science and sleep, telling more bedtime stories of the cosmos and of us. For now, rest well. Let the brain you carry cradle you back into the ocean from which the first minds rose. And let morning find you a little more in love with the story that made you.